Welcome everyone to the August Conservation Commission meeting. It's a beautiful night, one of the rare remaining beautiful summer evenings in Scarborough, and thank you all for spending your time with us tonight. So we have a robust discussion I'm anticipating, so let's get started, and we'll do that by having Jamie call the roll.
Sure, I'll start in person. Randy,
Here.
Dick.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jessica,
Here, sorry.
that's all right. Marla,
Here.
Rita,
Here.
thank you.
Thank you all. And also with us are Autumn Spear and Andrew Mackey and Councillor Shoup. So thank you all, of course, Jamie. So let's begin with a land acknowledgement, just honoring all Indigenous people, the people who came before us and nurtured this place as stewards of Mother Earth, the first people. I make this acknowledgement aware that this land is unceded and that issues of water and territorial rights and encroachment upon sacred sites are ongoing in the Wabanaki homeland. I acknowledge the Owaskawag people who once lived in what is now Scarborough, and that as we support efforts for land and water protection, we honor the current tribes who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. So Jamie circulated the minutes, which are comprehensive as usual, and happy to entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Or we can just go ahead and take a vote.
Sure.
So would somebody like to make a motion and second it to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Okay. I just got an email from Maggie, so we'll do this
Okay.
and then I'll check and see what that said. Randy,
Yes.
Dick.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jessica,
Yes,
Marla,
I am going to abstain because I wasn't at that meeting.
okay.
Thank you.
Rita,
Yes.
thank you. All right, let me just check my email real quick and see if Maggie's having issues.
Okay. And in the meantime, I'll just go through what we're here to talk about tonight. So picking up on the conversations that we've been having all along, but especially good discussion from last month, we have great work done by the planning team and have a proposed environmental standards for wetlands protection that we'll discuss tonight. And Pete Slavinsky, who's not able to be with us this evening, has submitted comments. So we'll review his comments and have a chance for each of us to go around and share ours as well. And then the schedule and process for additional ordinance updates, which is really where our focus is now that we've made such other great progress. We want to look at how we can strengthen ordinances to support conservation in Scarborough. And the education subcommittee has, as always, done really great work, and we're on the cusp, we're the eve of the launch of the fall programming, if we can believe that. We're talking fall, and they've attached a report, but it'll be good to review that. And then there's really great movement around Sustainable Scarborough Day that's happening, so we'll have a chance to talk about that. And then some action from the town council and other updates as it's listed here. Is there any, and then also Dick would like to add a point or make a request. And what I'd like to do is put that under after old business. We can go back to a new business piece under what I believe is conserving land. So does that sound good to everybody? Any other additions? Okay. Great. Thank you. So we will open it up to public comment. Would you I'm looking at you because I think you're the public who's here with us, Andrew.
Public. Sure, I'll keep this really brief. I do apologize. I have to step out and leave at 6:40 tonight, so I'll probably miss some of the discussion, and it sounds like a really good discussion. I will put my plug in that I did last time. You know, our streams and rivers, for the most part here, start all their headwaters are within Scarborough, with the exception of the Nonsuch, and a couple streams that kind of cross into Scarborough, Red Brook, and some of those. But a lot of the smaller streams all start in Scarborough, and those are the headwaters. That's the source of water. So anything we can do to protect those will protect those streams, and then therefore will also help protect Scarborough Marsh. It is all connected. Disney, I guess, got that piece right. Not much else, but I did get that right. I just want to put that plug in. Forested wetlands do get developed. You know, the Corps and DEP will issue permits if there's appropriate mitigation for that loss. And, you know, most wetland ecologists will tell you restored or created wetlands do not match natural wetlands. It takes a long time to build back all the values that natural wetlands have compared to when we start getting in there. We've done a lot better job at it.
Recording in progress.
Wow. Then we used to do.
1 second. Dick, would you be able to mute yourself? on
So
your-
I'm trying to turn.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Maybe not.
So as part of that,
Sorry.
Dick, can you
And
just
turn
turn
the
your
sound off?
speakers all the way
I'll
down?
have to turn this off, like it's not gonna work, right?
Okay.
as part of that, the Scarborough Land Trust, we actively try to protect wetlands by acquisition or conservation easement, and we have several projects ongoing. We have 2 more that hopefully will be bringing to the Parks and Conservation Land Board in September, October. I mean, we're hoping, we're waiting to get on the agenda. And then they'll go to town council. Both of those have wetlands / streams involved with them. We're also pursuing a project right now that hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll be able to talk more about, which is quite a bit of wetlands associated with Scarborough Marsh. When I say quite a bit, I mean not a lot of big parcels left, but it's a key piece, I think. We're plugging away. We're trying to get as many projects as possible, and hopefully we'll help with that 30-30 goal.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, it's another great reminder of the ways that we can collaborate to support our goals that we have in common. And it's really great to see the work that Scarborough Land Trust is continuing to do to conserve land. Thank you. And welcome, Maggie. Thanks for joining us. So now we move to the proposed environmental standards for wetlands protection. That was offered to us in an attached PDF or as part of this PDF package, but also a Google Doc to offer our comments. We have initial comments from Pete Slavinsky, but maybe would you like to introduce this or walk us through? Thank you.
Definitely.
So Autumn can do that.
Thank you, everyone. So, when we started this, Jamie pointed us to a really good city of Portsmouth has some really good standards. Part of them are really good about their wetland protections. And so we borrowed some things from them. And then we sort of honed it in so it was more applicable to Scarborough.
Sorry, I missed the town.
Portsmouth.
Oh, great, okay.
So we looked at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and then some other examples of some other places. And really tried to look at our existing situations and try to apply some language that we thought would work for that. And this is, of course, just a starting point. So no one's necessarily married to any of the words or anything. It's just a good, when we go through the ordinances with long range law, we'll start with the layout and something to respond to, and it's a fine tuning. And then, so I suspect it'll take a couple of meetings and some Google Doc input to get to something that you all are pleased with. At the same time, I'm running this through this group. I'm going to be doing a parallel effort through the Long Range Planning Committee. Their meeting is not till September 15th though, so we'll be able to have some initial comments.
Okay,
And then so they can look at it from a different perspective or a similar perspective. And then hopefully we'll converge and then we can get it to ordinance committee. So that's sort of the approach.
and at what point is the Conservation Commission's comments final? In terms of the continued iteration of this
When
document?
you all tell me that you're done with it,
Okay.
that'll be the Conservation Commission's
Okay.
final draft. And then if Long Range Planning Committee has a draft that's completely different, we'll have to have further conversations. Usually that group likes to tweak words and just
Okay,
little things. I think the concepts won't change much. I do suspect that the setbacks themselves may change, I think that this group may have a requirement for a larger setback. Long range may have the same or smaller. Ordinance may change. I suspect that'll be the meat of what changes.
okay.
But everyone will have what group identified what specification.
And I guess I'm just getting a sort of where we are in the process or line. So we say, oh, we're done, and then it goes to a next step,
So
or,
sort of.
okay,
The way I'd like to do it is, this is your August meeting, so we'll take all your initial comments and anything over the next week or so, especially, and put it back into this draft. And then I'll take that draft to long range planning in September, and
okay,
then I'd like to bring that back to you all.
okay,
So you can be the end, but you'll get the input from a different perspective. And then that would go to ordinance. Sorry, that wasn't
Okay.
really clear.
no, yeah, thank
It's
you.
parallel, but a
All
little
right.
off.
And then ordinance will of course have opportunity to make changes as well before it goes to the council.
All right, and then it comes from ordinance committee to the council.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, great,
And sometimes ordinances go fast and sometimes they
Yep.
linger, so,
okay,
or
Thank
get
you.
sent back.
okay, yes, okay. Thanks, that's clear, all right.
And that's our world.
Welcome to your world, okay,
So yeah, the beginning, it just has to do with purpose statements, and these are borrowed from Portsmouth. So I think Pete had some rearranging and some concerns and some extra things that he wanted to add. I think those are all worthwhile comments, and if you want to discuss or add anything else, that's fine. I don't know, some groups like to go through section by section, and so if you want to do it that way, that's good. And some groups like to skip around.
would you just do a quick run
Sure.
through the whole document?
Oh, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and just sort of like why it makes sense to you,
Okay,
and then we can go back and go section by section.
okay.
If that sounds good to everybody, and I can't see your faces, so if you either shut in or,
Maggie's giving me a thumbs up.
okay, yeah, Jamie can see your faces.
So the purpose is really just to outline basically why we're doing this. And this section will go into our chapter 405B. So it will be inserted into a section with site plans standards. So the purpose just says why we're doing this. There is some language in here at the bottom that talks about the more restrictive provisions shall apply. As Andrew said, the DEP, but you can get permits to develop it in the wetlands. So even if you could get those permits, the city and towns can be more restrictive. And so the more restrictive would apply. That's in the first part. Applicability is who's going to have to do this. And so that is important to tell you what development and when you would see it in the process. Definitions, pretty straightforward. Then the general standards section D, this is where you really want to pay attention to what these setbacks are. And so we've designed it, we have a natural resource setback. And so that's the big area. And then within that, there's a vegetative buffer, and that is the really protected area. And then included in this is also a requirement for boundary markers. And I have a note to add diagrams here, so it's very clear. I think that any opportunity to add illustrations would be helpful. And then you get into what you can do in each of those sections. So depending on what source, what type of natural resource we're talking about, there are different things that you can do within those areas. So a vernal pool, you essentially, as proposed, you can't do anything in a vernal pool. But in a natural resource setback, you can do a fence within some reason. So that's in that part. And then we have the plan required. And then what's not included, but will need to be included and discussed, is if there's any opportunities for waivers. So waivers is always the last section, as we go through these, to make it very clear what you can and cannot ask for. And so if there's nothing, we can simply add a statement that there are no waivers to these. Usually there's something that comes up that we probably need to address. And it's better to address them in the front end, right, to get them requested. So that's it in a nutshell.
And Maggie has her hand up.
Okay. Maggie?
Yeah, yes. I remember, I think it was last time, there was a discussion about a request from Nonesuch Brewery to do a parking lot across the street. Anyway, there was some discussion, and Pete was involved, about, we got into a discussion about tributaries and including tributaries in this kind of standards and regulation thing. And I guess they followed whatever was the regulation at the time, but it anyway, and it was, I don't know how to incorporate some of it, because that made sense to me. And I don't know how to, that kind of language or that kind of comment could be incorporated into this, because I'm not sure about the little table about regulations. I'm not sure about those I don't know those setbacks, but there's got to be somebody on our group who does, and to include that kind of language. Am I making sense?
Yes. So we have a natural resource, river, stream, or brook.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back up to the definition, because I think that is where that's gonna be an important part of this discussion.
Can you all see the definition section?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking right here.
So that's the part, so the definitions need to accurately put forth what you all want to regulate, right? So if we say river, stream, or brook, but we're missing something, we definitely need to address it in that. These definitions came from Maine DEP.
Yeah, I would say, the example with Nonesuch River and, talking about the tributary didn't have the right level of protection. Autumn and I have learned a lot about our shoreline zoning regulations, which are set forth by the state, and under the state's definition of a stream, actually a lot of streams are left out of shoreline zoning. And so I think that was probably the issue that we ran into with the Nonesuch River development. The definition that we've put forth here for river, stream, or brook is much more broad. So it will apply to more types of streams than what is currently captured under our shoreline zoning.
Okay, so a river tributary would be included in this as a stream.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Then in that instance, if you went to the table of general standards, your natural resource setback would be 100 feet. And then your vegetated buffer would be 75 feet.
And Dick had his hand up as well.
Hi, Dick.
I talked to the town engineer about this, and I don't think she really liked the idea, but I'm familiar with one very special part of town. And when I came here in 1952, we used the 1946 USGS topo map to find out what was going on in this part of town. And there are at least 3 streams in this topo map. They were there in 1952. They're still there today. You can see the culverts under the Eastern Road. They haven't changed in size or intensity. But after 1946, those streams were left out of all maps. So these are what I call the mysterious disappearing streams. And they're important because they're important for microhabitats. They're important in terms of floodplain definition, and you can see that they figure into the FEMA maps. They're important in terms of culverts, and they're important, just generally important in terms of feeding into major tributaries to the river. So I would like to suggest that we rediscover all the missing streams in Scarborough, because especially in the headwater areas, and this is something Peter covered, the literature I've been reading, especially in the headwater areas, these smaller streams are some even greater importance. And if they're not shown on any maps, then all of a sudden they're just, I don't know, they're ghost streams. And I think they could be highly important.
The town doesn't have the ability to determine what is mapped on the USGS maps or on DEP's maps or anything like that. I think,
Well, these were on the USGS maps.
but they're not anymore. And so there was a reason they were removed from those maps.
And what I'm suggesting is that it would be worthwhile finding out what that reason was. Number one. And number two, if somebody, for example, Maine Department of Transportation, because they have to have these things on their maps for culverts and things. Number one, find out what the reason is. Number two, find out if there is any mapping in the state that actually includes these streams. Now, if you go into DOT and look at their culverts and stuff, it says big culverts. It doesn't address their small culverts, but I know they've got those maps somewhere. They've got to have them. But I don't know how you get to them, short of going to Augusta and going into the GIS office in DOT.
Is that something that we could do in parallel with this effort, or retroactively once this, you say this is passed and becomes an ordinance or standards? We discover missing streams from our maps. Is that something that then the Conservation Commission can put forward?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's not anything that we've ever run into before.
All right,
I
so
don't
how's it,
even
how about this?
know. The way I would look at this is when a developer comes in and they're gonna go and do their survey and their topo on that particular site, and they're gonna identify what's out there. So they have to do wetland delineation if it's required, and they're gonna identify a vernal pool. So it's really they tell us what's out there, and we verify the information. But they don't have to follow a map. This can live separately from a map. Shoreland lives with a map,
Okay,
right? And so, and correct me if I'm kind of saying anything that sounds weird. So Shoreland has a map, it has zoning and resource protection overlay. But what this does is try to pick up all those other things that are not included in that. So I don't think it has to necessarily tie directly to a map.
okay,
Because even wetlands, you get a new delineation every 5 years or so if you want to develop. So that changes. So I think you're okay. And I think that's an interesting but separate concept, separate task from this. To find. I'm not sure how we could do that, but I don't think this is gonna negatively affect that if we were to find something.
Would it be okay to go ahead and do some research on these missing streams?
I don't have the staff to do the research.
No, I'm saying if I could go ahead and
Yeah.
do the research and find out what's happening on these missing streams and why they're missing. I mean, maybe I'm making up something that's completely worthless. There's a good reason they're missing.
Right.
But it seems to me that I can look at these streams. One of them even had a dam attached. We used to go skating in the winter. I
Really?
mean, it was well-known stream in town and it's just gone. And it's still there. I can point it out to you. So I'd really like to find out why they took them off the maps.
Yes, I would say, that would be a good point of interest and certainly something to bring to the Conservation Commission. And we can still work on these standards with that, being an additional piece that you're working on. So thank you.
Okay,
And Maggie, your hand is up. Is that a new hand up?
That's a new hand, yes.
Good hand, Maggie.
So I'm looking at what you have up there now, and I'm looking at Pete's suggestion, which is to have 75 feet setback for everything, with 125-foot setback and 75 to 100-foot natural vegetated
Buffers.
buffers. Okay. And so so large, more extensive setback for those. So his impulse to have more setbacks is what is how I read this as a suggestion. And to me, that seems like a good impulse in the right direction. I don't, especially with climate change, and so I don't know how we make a decision together about whether or not to include his suggestion or not. So where you have in the table came up from your research, is that right, Autumn?
Right, and it seemed, so we have to balance, this is the Conservation Commission, but I also have development. And right now, all of that top line says 0 across everything, right? So that's existing today standards. 0 natural resource setback and 0 vegetative buffer from these things.
Okay, so you're taking quite a step forward with this.
Step forward, and so I want to be cognizant of that we're making a big leap forward, where it may not be as big of a leap as Pete. Maybe it's
Okay.
a giant step, not baby steps for sure, but just keep that in mind when you come up with this. That's
Okay,
why
that's good to
in the
know.
way.
That's good to know that it's and then this has to pass another group, right?
Yes.
And then to the town council. So, yeah, okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Shall we discuss that then?
Well, like I say, I don't know how to. So is this what they have now, going from 0 to 75 for wetlands, for instance? Is that enough? Or is it 125 that we should be, I don't know the answer to that. Jess might know.
Jess also has her hand up.
Yeah, no, I was passing. Jess.
Well, I am not an expert on setbacks and buffers. However, it seems like if we're going to put in place for the first time wetlands, 5 feet just seems less than my arm's width. It just doesn't quite feel like enough. You'd want it to at least be a large human. It just, but that's not based on anything scientific. That's just 5 is better than 0, but it's just not a lot.
Also pay attention to the scale of the wetlands as well. So the smaller wetlands probably don't have as much ecological value as the larger wetlands, and the larger wetlands do have the wider buffers and setbacks. So less than 1,000 square feet is not a very large wetland. Really, we're saying we don't want your equipment in the wetland when you're building around it. Because right now they are putting their equipment in the wetland when they're building around it. And Marla has her hand up also.
Marla?
Yes, okay. I am also looking at this and I'm thinking from a developer's point of view, I think it might make more sense for it to be a standard setback for all wetlands. I do get the idea that a small wetland doesn't have the same value as a larger one, but as a developer, if you know it's a minimum 75 feet, then you just know what that setback is, so that there's not a, well, it's 985 square feet or it's 1,050 square feet, but in a dry summer, it's, this side or that side of that boundary. Do you see what I'm saying? I just wonder if standardization might be a little bit even easier for a developer.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
I would go with a higher.
He's saying
Minimum.
75 across the top row and then vegetated buffer, let's say 100. I mean, that's what he's saying. So
No,
no,
why can't the vegetative buffer be the entire width of the setback?
be included in the natural resource.
It can. There's just a little bit of difference about what you can do in it, but you could do it that way. I will urge you to keep some delineation between the wetland sizes, though. You may say standardization would be great, but you would essentially be rendering some sites in town completely undevelopable if you applied the same setback to all of the wetlands. And that's gonna be a hard sell to get this approved. I'm just putting that out there. And I think if you scale it a bit, and so ultimately what I'm gonna ask from RGIS is whatever number you settle on, I'm gonna ask what that looks like on vacant existing property. Because that's what council, I think, is wanna see. What impact is that gonna have on people's property that they own, that today they could build on 100%? And so I think, I just wanna kind of be that voice in the back of your head to make sure that you're cognizant of that, and so that you get to keep you're really focusing on the really important stuff and you don't lose it all because it's extreme.
And I just want to mention this also, that the state still allows filling of wetlands. If
Right.
we're requiring buffers and setbacks to wetlands, we're essentially eliminating that wetland fill. Hopefully in a lot of cases. So, and we need to kind of do that test and make sure that still like that this language actually does apply in that instance, that yes, by putting setbacks and buffers in place around wetlands, we're no longer allowed to fill those wetlands. That's huge. So even if we're saying just a 5-foot setback, we're still not filling that wetland in order to get that 5-foot setback. We're not filling that wetland to get the 75-foot setback in the 50-foot buffer and things like that. So let's keep that in mind also. I think we talked last meeting about, I was in another meeting earlier this month where let's not let perfection get in the way of good or better than what we currently have. We need to, this is kind of incremental progress.
Yeah, Andrew.
Sorry to interrupt, but I do want to just bring up one point. I understand, not having buffers and having to introduce this and get it through the other committees and the process, but I do need to point out vernal pools. If you maintain just 50 feet around a vernal pool, even in perfect vegetative cover, and everything else outside of that 50-foot footprint is developed, that vernal pool is gone. The functionality of that vernal pool is gone. There will be no breeding amphibians. I know that's difficult to hear, but I do want to just read quickly, and I'll tell you the source here in a minute. They consider the vernal pool envelope 100 foot from the pool's edge, where the recommendations are maintain an undeveloped forested habitat around the pool, including both canopy and understory, avoid barriers to amphibian dispersal, protect and maintain pool hydrology and water quality, maintain a pesticide-free environment. Now, here's the other part that is people forget, but this is the critical part because these amphibians only use the pool to breed. Is protecting 100 to 170, 100 to 750 feet from the pool's edge, where you're maintaining or restoring a minimum of 75% of the zone in contiguous unfragmented forest with undisturbed ground cover. Maintain or restore forested corridors, provide suitable terrestrial habitat for pool breeding amphibians, minimize disturbance to the forest floor, and where possible, maintain native understory vegetation. This is all from kind of a standard that has been used for vernal pools. And I will get to it. It is best development practices conserving pool breeding amphibians in residential and commercial developments in the northern United States. And it was prepared among other partners, the Wildlife Conservation Society. It's technical paper series number 5, and it's available online. And I'm just, you know, I've seen this happen in other communities where they create a protection zone around vernal pools, but it doesn't include the whole lifestyle, the life cycle of all the breeding amphibians that use that pool. The pool's protected, but you lose all the breeding amphibians.
Is there any, I don't know how to say it for lack of a better word, is there any size of vernal pool that's more important or more likely to have a higher?
The state goes not by size of the vernal pool, but the number of egg masses found.
Okay,
And there's a priority level. If you find, for different species, it's, I think, 58 clusters for maybe spotted salamanders, 80 or 90 for wood frogs and some other things. So it's, that's how they determine priority status for vernal pools.
would it be appropriate to have sort of a level of vernal pool, much like we are trying to figure out how to do for wetlands?
Definitely, we
You know-
probably have vernal pools now that are not very functional for breeding amphibians.
Right,
But ones that do tick all those boxes are critically important for Scarborough, because I'm sure we've lost a ton of vernal pools over the years.
so is there some language that we could add that would standardize when they're doing their due diligence and they're doing the survey and give it to us to review? It's a vernal pool and it checks these boxes and then these standards apply. Would that be? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like trying to figure out how to quantify.
I will say
it's
that
possible.
the only time you can determine some of this data is in March and early April. And unfortunately, you know, that's your only window here for our breeding amphibians, for all bull amphibians.
We had in our definitions, April 10th through May 10th. So should that be March?
Well, and that was based on information from DEP.
Is that okay still in the definitions?
Yeah, I mean, I will say with global climate change, we'll probably see those dates shift
Sure,
earlier
yeah.
and earlier. But you know, no one's quite sure exactly, you know, what that means yet. And some years, like this year, seems to have been a little delayed. Basically, believe it or not, because there was a lack of water early in the spring, lack of rain. And then further in the spring, we got rain.
Right. Okay, so that's good for the definition, and then I can definitely take a look at those standards, and it sounds like. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to dissuade you, I'm just trying to, there's a process, and then going from 0 to a lot is a lot, and so I just want to be aware of that, so we can.
Thank you.
make
Thanks,
arrangements.
Andrew.
Thank you,
Good night.
Andrew.
Drive safe. So in our site plan review memo, the checklist that we had a question that for a site plan review of, does the proposed development plan, excuse me, does the proposed development plan for a naturally vegetative buffer of at least 75 feet in width around the entire perimeter of the developed area? If the buffer is adjacent to the Scarborough Marsh or its tributaries, is the width expanded to at least 150 feet? That was following some discussion on the commission as well as with Pete's input. So I think he's obviously bringing that back up
Sure.
again here. And it sounds like, well, Conservation Commission needs to ask for as much as we would like to see. But we also don't want to have this be a dead document by the time it reaches long-range planning. Is there a chance for discussion rather than sort of putting out numbers? Well, rather than having our increased numbers just be the last point of contact and there's either a thumbs up or a change or a thumbs down.
Yeah, I think you can still put in the number and that's how it will get presented. And so, if when it goes to ordinance committee, long range planning is not really, they're not approving
Okay,
either. So it'll go with both. And if there's two tables, that's
Yes.
okay too.
okay,
It's just want to have an open dialogue about. what
Yes,
it
yeah.
means, right?
Right.
For the property that we have left that is developable in Scarborough.
yes,
This is a pretty big impact. We have some property on Higas right now. That if this would essentially deem quite a bit of it undevelopable. So I just want you to know what that's the other side of that conversation would be.
yeah,
That's all. But if you want to increase these, we can add anything to the table from the Conservation Commission's perspective.
okay,
But
thanks.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna go to Jessica and then Karen and then Dick. And just respectfully, Conservation Commission is catching up on a lot of other impact. So, yes, we would like to put forward numbers that are gonna have an impact on development. That's exactly what we're here to do. We don't want to keep destroying what is left in Scarborough. So Jessica, then Karen.
Is it possible for us to include a companion piece? Providing the citations and the justifications for our position? We're not trying to just come up with the biggest number, but we're trying to be as mindful as possible with enacting standards that are useful. And so if for example, we increase a buffer or buffers, but we provide the justification as to why we think that those are important standards, would that be helpful in facilitating those conversations?
Extremely. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
fantastic.
Great suggestion. Yeah, and having
Because I'm like,
references.
5 is small, but that's not like a real reason. But if we like,
Right, yes, any, scientific backup, anything that you can provide is super helpful, right? To justify the distance.
Great, thanks. All right, then Karen and Dick and then Maggie.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback on what Jessica was saying, I think you guys should give your recommendations on your expertise, on what you guys think and why and I think, giving your reasoning behind it is, but I think you should stick behind why you want these setbacks. I think it's important, and I sort of sometimes think of it as a negotiation. So you aim high, and then, long range can sort of say, okay, well, we know, development, that's not going to work. And then ordinance says, well, then we need to think about the people who want to develop this land. I think from my perspective, I want to see, hardcore, what would we do if you guys could have your way?
Great, thank you, Dick.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad Jessica brought that up. Could we develop a place on the Conservation Commission website to build an ongoing literature review? Last week, I just spent a couple of days and went through stuff that was available on the web. And what really impressed me was as a complete neophyte, that repairing buffer studies are extremely complex. I saw one chart with 5 major factors, and within each of these major factors, there were 5 to 8 sub-factors that you should be considering. If you multiply that out, that's a lot of factors. And the reports I've come across are very long and very detailed. And they're all immediately accessible. So could we kind of throw this into a pool on our website or on our drive
Yes.
and kind of build an ongoing kind of documentation with the understanding that probably, I'm not sure if there's anybody with a lot of expertise, but I know when I start reading this material, it's very, very frustrating because it is so complicated.
Thank you.
And a lot of it has been pitched in terms of one specialty. The hydrologists have their very narrow vision. The habitat people have their one very narrow vision. Very, very complex.
Yes, that the Google Drive we have for the commission, and there's a resources subfolder. I don't have in mind exactly or right now what the mapping is of the folders, but there's definitely places where we're collecting information. So please add to them. Yeah, thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, so building on what you said, Randy, and then what Andrew read to us, and what Pete has said in the beginning, I feel like it would be, and then Jess's suggestion, it would be really helpful for us to have to frame this in terms of our values and this document and what is driving our recommendations. So it could be something that, as Jess suggested, that we have as an addendum that, this is, but even referring to whatever the document that Andrew was, that's the kind of thing we're building our recommendations on. It's just not pulling numbers as Jess said, to be as big as we can, but we have thought through this in a very reflective way. And I think that is going to make the document have more validity.
Thank you. So the long-range planning meets on the 15th, 16th, what did you say?
The 15th.
Okay.
September.
We next meet on the 11th. And it sounds like most of the interest of adding a cover letter or some kind of memo providing our case is coming from members of the Conserving Land Subcommittee. So would it be fair to ask the Conserving Land Subcommittee Chair, Jessica, to take this on? Yes.
This is not my area of expertise whatsoever. Like, I've been doing this for almost 25 years and I don't do this. And I'm also not going to be at the next meeting.
Okay.
So
Well,
I am
and-
not an ideal candidate for this task.
I think what we, thank you for that. And I think what we'd be looking for is not, that there are specific experts or deep dive understanding of this, but that we have some folks who can research, add resources, and then offer to prepare a draft memo cover letter to these standards as to why the Conservation Commission believes or is proposing these numbers. They're based in science and other resources that we found.
I don't mean to nominate the person who isn't here, but it does seem like Pete has more of a background, or maybe he's just the one that commented.
Yes.
In the
Is there
science.
somebody here who'd be willing to work with him on that?
I'm interested.
Dick will work with Pete. Thank you. Okay, and then I guess the request is that for the September meeting, we would have a draft cover memo to look at. Yeah. And I would say, what do you all think about for right now, considering the numbers that Pete had recommended, and then just use those as our basis for comparing against what we found? And I would say it's not just Pete and Dick who would contribute to the research, but all of us can contribute. Okay, thank you. And that's things like, as Autumn has done, what's the town of Portsmouth doing? What is the town of Saco doing? What are other areas with great tributaries or marshlands? What are they doing? So being able to look at research based on what standards these other areas have. Anything else on that?
So,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. So are you guys gonna keep the numbers as Pete's proposed, or wait and let me know what you come up with additional research?
I'm looking at the screen. Did you all get Autumn's question? Marla and Rita, I haven't heard from you tonight on this matter. Do you have a thought about Autumn's question?
I think. I guess I would like to look at some references myself before I throw out any more, numbers. And I would be interested to see what other municipalities in Maine have for their standards. So I don't know how we'd find that out. Because, well, that might be difficult, but maybe talking to some surrounding towns, but Raiders.
I didn't get.
I'd like to see for expand.
Sorry, you're going in and out. By the way, we do, I think it's the Conservation Commission has a series of folders called ordinances / buffers. And I've uploaded several or a handful of documents that I've found, so we can start with those and then think about others that we can review. Rita, you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Just to reiterate what many have already said, the importance of, putting some really good scientific resources and reasoning behind the numbers that we're proposing. I, again, am not an expert in this field at all. I certainly could help with some research if pointed in the right direction. But I really have really nothing to go on right now, and agree with Marla. I think we really need to do our research before we put out any more numbers, so that we can be sure to have some really good backup resources for what we're proposing.
Thank you, Rita. Maggie?
Yeah, so I work with somebody who is the head of the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership. And I could ask him if there are any municipalities, just to point us in a direction that, or to get started, in his judgment, do a really good job of this around southern Maine area. So that would give us a place to start looking at, municipalities that might. It'll be one person's opinion, but he is knowledgeable in this field, so.
Thank you. That'd be great. And just, respect for what Autumn and team have done already, finding this from Portsmouth as an example document, and the interest of the commissioners to go as far as we can to be able to protect as much as we're able to, given what what remains and the damage is already done and wetlands already filled in, we want to be able to go further and we want to base that in, ground it in what's good research, solid research and other sources. Okay, so we've got a few things that we want to do before the next meeting. We've got Pete and Dick leading on this attached memo and everyone contributing to research. Again, there's a folder that we're shared, that is shared among us, called ordinances, and then there's a subfolder buffers.
And I did put a link to the buffer subfolder in the chat.
Okay. And in there's some example ordinances, other resources, there's a resources subfolder. And then there's additional language of other zoning ordinances and so forth. So maybe start there and expand on that. Okay. So any further comments on this piece before we, okay, well, so now we know what we're gonna be doing, what we're gonna be talking about on in our September meeting. What does that mean in terms of a process? It's still gonna move forward as, yeah.
Your meeting is on the 11th.
Mhm.
So what I'll do is incorporate any changes that you all have to the rest of the body. And I can show it to long range planning, sort of as a preliminary view. We are working on a landscape ordinance in long range planning too, so we have other things. So I won't spend a whole lot of time with it, maybe it'll just be. And that you guys are firming up what these numbers are.
Great.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Leave those blank, if you will.
Yeah,
And just
okay.
frame up the ordinance, the way it's written, but leaving the meat to be determined,
Okay,
if that works.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so next is the additional ordinance updates.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give an update on this process, because if you recall, the last meeting, we were looking at our kind of resource protection standards. And which are have been incorporated into the town's shoreline zoning ordinance. So just to give an update on that, and that this process, the process that we just went through is supplementary to that one, because as I mentioned, Autumn and I have learned an awful lot about our shoreline zoning ordinance and that process. And in order for us to make updates to that ordinance, which we still want to do, we have to involve the state, since the state sets the minimum standards, and they just need to approve what we're proposing to ensure that it meets the minimum. We're actually talking about exceeding the minimum. So because that was going to be another process, we decided to look at updating 405B initially. But we've also gone through and marked up the table of allowed uses in the shoreline zoning ordinance, specifically looking at resource protection. So there's going to be a couple different tracks that we're going on, but really thinking that this was going to, this process is going to affect most development, large development. And shoreline zoning will help us get at kind of the single family house lot development, the one-off development. So that will be kind of a step 2 of this process.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just so it's not lost, our low impact development, we're still hoping to bring that to you at our September 11th meeting also.
Wow,
So
okay.
we'll have
A lot.
a jam-packed meeting there, and we may be able to kind of go back and revisit that timeline and push that out a bit, or maybe it'll just be introduced at that meeting, and we'll plan to give it a thorough review at our October meeting.
Okay. All right, I have another question meant to bring up about the environmental standards. Would this also be a place where if the developer wants a waiver, there would be a fee would that be named in this document or would it be added to other impact fees?
Oh, like a conservation fee it wouldn't be in this, it would be in another, we
Okay.
could set up the language for it. But I'd have to make sure, you really need to. And I think that I'm speaking right, you probably need to wait until, the open space plan is done and then we can incorporate that fee. I think
Okay.
that'll be the best way to do that fee,
Okay,
cause
Oh.
that'll give us a value of what we're looking at.
okay. I'm gonna take some liberty here. Because we just had a mention of the open space plan. Moving into updates, can I bump up town council first? And we are hoping that the town council soon approves the development of an ad hoc committee. And maybe Karen can tell us where that stands.
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple updates for you guys. But ad hoc open space committee was number 2 on my list.
Okay.
And, I think the open space committee was Jean Marie's idea. So my understanding is Jean Marie and I are going to meet with Tom Hall, I think next week, hopefully, to kind of finalize it. I think it was too bad we didn't get it in the proclamation. But it's happening. I think as I said before, everyone's been really distracted with the school stuff going on. And so I think despite my request to push up the ad hoc open space, it has not been met. But I'm hoping that by the September meeting that I will have a lot of good information for you, or before that.
Is there, do we know? I mean, there's a lot of things that the town is advancing and working on. Is there additional research or time that's needed for what was a phrase that we left out of the proclamation or the resolution? Is there anything else that's needed besides that phrase for the town council to review and approve?
I don't think so. And I think everyone would be behind it. I think a lot of the consideration that I've learned is about staff capacity. And I think when everyone is overloaded, sometimes things unfortunately don't move forward despite everyone's efforts. But it's not lost on anyone. I know Jean Marie's been on vacation a lot this summer, to be honest. And so this is my first summer as a counselor. So we're trying to manage it all. I have other updates for you, but I'm happy to answer more questions about the open space committee.
Thank you. Yeah.
If there aren't any more, I see that Sustainable Scarborough Day is on the agenda, and I will not steer the thunder, but Jamie did reach out to me about doing a proclamation at the September 20th town council meeting in anticipation of the Sustainable Scarborough Day. And I already got a response from Tom Hall saying that shouldn't be a problem. So I guess more work for you guys. There's a proclamation that you're drafting that I would most likely assume will be approved. And we're looking forward to Sustainable Scarborough Day. So that happened. Yeah, that's exciting. I also, we were talking a lot about the long range planning committee tonight, and it's funny because one of the things I wanted to mention this evening that there is an opening. It's a very different type of committee, but I don't think at the moment there's anyone with your perspective sitting on it. They meet once a month. I think it's a Thursday morning or something. They all have their expertise. Right, exactly. So, I see a lot of expertise here and I see the involvement and the things you guys are doing. So I also wanted to mention that there's an opening on long range planning. There's an opening on the community services board, which does a lot with the current lands that we have. And they talk about connectivity and things like that. There's actually an opening on the Portland Water District, which is not related to us per se, but they actually do a lot of conservation work. And so they had reached out to me. They have, I think, one person running, but I wanted to mention that position as well. And the only other thing I'm going to mention, I'm just going to kind of throw it out there because this is new to me. I'm always trying to explore better ways to protect Scarborough, the natural resources. And so I talk to people, see what other towns are doing and things like that. I did email Angela Blanchette and I asked if we have a stormwater management fee, which we do not. We have, I think, a one-time fee that developers have to pay at the beginning, and that is it. Where my understanding is other towns like Portland, where any resident, any property that you touch and you touch the impervious land around it, there is a yearly stormwater management fee that these people pay. This is a new concept to me. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there. It's something that I'm exploring to see if there's better ways to protect land, or maybe give the town more money to help manage this land that we're trying to protect, and that maybe with rising seas and things like that. That's all I got tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions, but those are some of the things that are going on.
Great update.
Yeah.
You bring a lot. Thank you very much, Karen. Any
Sure.
questions or comments for her to share? With our thanks. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to Education Subcommittee.
Actually, did
Oh,
you want
pardon
to add Dick's agenda item?
Thank
before we
you.
go to updates?
Yes. To the your interest in the GIS work.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to ask, sorry about my voice. If there's anybody on the Conservation Commission or anybody else anywhere that would be interested in helping me out develop a GIS project I'm working on. This in no way interferes with anything the town is doing. It's entirely oriented to natural resources. And I really need some help with the technical details of getting the GIS set up and going. And I'd also like to mention that Randy pointed me out to a great resource for developing story maps. And I took the seminar, and I took the follow-up, which was just earlier today. And we developed a story map for Millbrook in this case, which is available online. But the point I'd like to make is these story maps do not have to be connected up to maps at all. You can use these for any kind of educational purpose you want. So people on the Education Committee might be interested in developing story maps on particular topics. It doesn't preclude them using maps, but they can do them independently of maps. And I'd be more than happy to walk through the process with them if they want to get started. After I took the hour seminar, there really isn't that much to it. I mean, it's very, very self-explanatory, but if it's a matter of just getting started and getting the ball rolling, I'd be more than willing to talk to anybody who wants to do something.
Fantastic. Are you all familiar with story maps? The thought is that one way to use them, there are many ways many purposes that they can serve. But one way would be leading up to an election period where we're going to be asking for a bond, using those months leading up to be able to tell the story through a visual interactive presentation of why conservation is so important to Scarborough, and what might be possible with additional land conserved. So thank you for spending your time learning about how to make one. And so you have two requests for support. One is to work with you on a story map, and perhaps that's something that you can connect with Marla and Rita on. And then the second is GIS technical support.
Yeah, we're just interested in kind of looking over my shoulder and helping me with mapping out a GIS on a very kind of basic user-friendly level, not getting into real-time data collection or very sophisticated GIS work, just putting together some of the layers that are available statewide and seeing how we can look at them for Scarborough. I mean, this ties in very, very naturally to any kind of repairing buffer work. Things like this, it all ties together.
Thank you. Any thoughts from folks? right, keep raising the point, Dick. And thank you all for, and thank you again for the story map. Maybe at some point we can share an example story map, so that we can get a sense of what that looks like, or different examples.
I'll put a link up.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, Education Subcommittee, and we have a great report from them. Thank you for the time you're giving to create this series coming up, and what would you like to call out from this report?
Well, I'm happy to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. And Rita, of course, can also fill in any gaps. But so first of all, we have a couple of articles in process, and I decided to dig into what is a Conservation Commission and looking at the history of conservation commissions in Maine and even in our town. And we have an interesting history here, and you'll read more when the article gets published. But I just wanted to mention this. I got this information from Tody Justice, who is our town clerk. So she said that on March 1st of 1972, Rebecca Warren, and she is related to the Warren Woods family, she volunteered her services on a conservation commission, and Richard Harvey spoke and presented a list and gave a list of 30 to 40 people who were willing to serve on that committee. So I believe that this is the Richard Harvey that is in that room with you right now. And this was in March of 1972. So 51 years ago. So, Richard Harvey has been involved with the Conservation Commission over a long period of time. And of course, we have these folks to thank that this commission even exists. So thank you, Richard Harvey. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about our speaker series, which is very exciting. Rita and I and a bunch of our collaborators, which include the Scarborough Land Trust, the Scarborough Public Library, and the Scarborough Marsh, we put together a speaker series for the fall. So we have 3 events, and we're really hoping that our Conservation Commission members will be in attendance, either through Zoom or in person. And Jamie made a really beautiful flyer, and it was in our meeting agenda with the agenda today. So, and I'm actually going to ask Jamie if she could send that out to all of us just as an individual file so that we can send that to our network. So our friends, our family, our colleagues, to get the word out. And of course, the library and the town are going to help us publicize these events. But so we have 3. The first one's coming up September 12th, which is actually the day after our Conservation Commission meeting on September 11th. And then we've got the second one on October 5th. And then the third one is on November 2nd. So there's a lot of events coming up. You can, read the report to see, but it's about the marsh and tributaries. And then we have one on sea level rise that Pete Slavinsky, one of our members, is going to be presenting on with Kristen Puryear of the Maine Natural Areas Program. Sally Stockwell will be presenting on November 2nd and talking about why forests are important. And of course, Jamie is actually also presenting on the September 12th event. So big shout out to Jamie for helping with just everything. And it's been great working with Rita. So Rita, I don't know if you have anything else to add about what we've been to.
You did great. I just wanted to mention that we are getting, a little bit more information out about the content of these presentations to FOSUM and SLT, and they will be presenting that information in their e-newsletters and print newsletters if they have them, and getting that out to their members as well. So hopefully we will have a really good turnout for these 3 sessions.
Yeah, and I will
Wow.
say it's been fun to work with these different groups to put this together, and we are really trying to build a collaboration between all of these nonprofits and the town so that we can really work towards common goals. You know, and our subcommittee is working on education, but you know, really we want to increase the conservation of land in Scarborough. We really want to do a lot with this, and collaborating with these groups is going to be really helpful. And so it's just exciting to work together and network and come together with common goals. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the collaboration. I see you, Maggie, and just it's really great to be able to highlight that this fall and ongoing. It's going to take all of us. Thank you. Great work, Maggie.
So this is for Marla. I went into the agenda and anyway, the registration. If I go on Scarborough Library, will I find it under conservation to register? Because the link in here is not live. So if I do that, I can only come to the Tuesday. I can't come to Thursday nights, but I could come to the Tuesday night one. I want to.
Yes, it should be on the library site, and there's also an option there to choose a Zoom option as well as an in-person.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have seen them listed on the library website if you go to their events.
And I did just send out the flyer. I apologize. I thought I had already sent it to this group. So everybody should have gotten it this evening.
Thank you. Really great work, exciting fall ahead, and that includes Sustainable Scarborough Day. I've lost my place temporarily. Is that
That's
next?
yeah.
Excellent.
So Sustainable Scarborough Day, we're kind of hitting the crunch time for the event planning, since we are about a month and a half out from the event at this point. We have roughly 20 vendors or so signed up to table at the event. We're got our 6 speakers lined up. We'll be releasing the workshop schedule pretty soon so that people can plan their time accordingly. Working on getting food trucks lined up for the event. I just sent out the event flyer to Allison Carrier, our communications manager. So that will be going out in tomorrow's e-newsletter. We will also have a press release or article in the Leader coming out next week, I believe. And then following up with more information on social media and in the town's e-newsletter, and getting the businesses and organizations that have signed on to attend the event, getting packets of information out to them so that they can help start promoting the event with their followers and their various networks as well. And Marla, Rita, and Randy, feel free to jump in on things that I may have forgotten from our last meeting update.
Just yeah, everyone's encouraged to come and participate, and the date and time again.
Yeah, sure. It's October 1st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we may be putting out a call for hands on deck to help volunteer at the day. Just if you know, the people that are coming and setting things up, if they need another set of hands to help them get set up and things like that, we may be putting out that call and hope that you all will either attend and hopefully learn something and or contribute if you have ideas. Also wanted to ask if this group wanted a table. The Sustainability Committee is planning to have a table to give out information and talk about what that group does and some of the areas that it focuses on. The Conservation Commission is also welcome to have a table at the event if that's something that's of interest. And people are available to staff it.
Be a perfect spot to have an ongoing story map available next year. So if I would encourage that we do have a table, it just would mean that we'd want to have a couple of volunteers available to do that. And I'd say please let please let Jamie know, or me, Marla and Rita know, since the three of us sit on the, planning committee.
And one other thing to mention, I did circulate a draft proclamation to make October 1st Sustainable Scarborough Day, and request that the council pass that proclamation. Karen referenced that in her update. I did send it to you all as a Google Doc, so please feel free to go in and take a look at that, make any edits and revisions. The Sustainability Committee will be working on it later at their meeting later on this month. Would like to have it wrapped up by our September 11th meeting date so that we can get it over into the council packet for their meeting on the 20th or the 21st. In September.
So you'd need to have comments by September 11th?
Yeah, we'll have to kind of work through that process by
Okay.
September 11th.
Great. And
that's-
earlier, better, is better.
Hmm?
Earlier is always better.
Earlier is always better. Yeah, so feel free to go in and take a look at it and make comments now. We'll be looking for action at our September meeting.
Thanks. Planning board.
Planning board, our last meeting, we took a look at a proposal site plan for Allagash Brewery on Market Street in the Downs. They have a significant amount of tree saved that I think is positive, that site. We also, I think that's probably the only one that would be of interest to you all. They're going back to planning board at the end of the month with some revisions and some additional trees.
Nice. Thank you. Sustainability Committee?
Yeah, so working also on Sustainable Scarborough Day. That will be the big focus for the next couple of meetings. And then also they continue working on kind of their proposal for funding for various sustainability initiatives. So developing a capital improvement project to be included in our the town's fiscal year 25 budget, and also proposing a line item in there for sustainability initiatives.
Nice. And Parks and Conservation Land Board, Jessica, do you have a report to share with us?
It's not a very exciting report. Our last meeting was canceled and we've yet to reschedule.
Okay. But it sounds like there's going to be some projects coming forward for review by the land board. Based on what we heard earlier tonight.
Yes, and we're also trying to draft a letter to encourage the council to consider another bond measure. But I don't really know where we're at in that process. A letter has been drafted and we're waiting for comments.
Nice. Thank you. Well, that gets us through the updates. And I also just want to go back to planning board update and just acknowledge that a developer is protecting, saving, and adding trees, which is a great something that the Conservation Commission celebrates and appreciates. Thank you. Any final thoughts? Okay, so
Marla has her.
excuse me. Yes, Marla?
Yes, I just put it up really quickly. So our October meeting was scheduled on Indigenous Peoples' Day. So could we reschedule that? And is now a good
Absolutely.
time to do that?
Yeah, we usually, I think, bump it to the week. So we can take a look at that date. That would be the 16th. October
That-
16th.
That sounds good to me.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, speaking of meaningful, important dates, it's really hard to say that our next meeting is September 11th, but there
Yes.
we are. September 11 is where it falls, and we'll have positive things to discuss then. So thank you all, lots of homework for us. And actions to take before that meeting, and thanks to everybody for your time and volunteering for the town. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I think everyone motions.
Okay, we all motion, excellent. Excellent,
I'll second it.
enjoy the rest of your
Enjoy
summer.
the rest of August.
All right.